I discovered that my own daughter had been living as me for the past 6 years, using my Social Security number to get married, file tax returns, collect government benefits, and even apply for credit cards, all while I was very much alive and completely unaware that someone else was walking around with my legal identity and had essentially erased my existence from official records. The shocking revelation came when I tried to apply for Medicare benefits on my 68th birthday and was told by the Social Security Administration that according to their records, I was already married to a man named Derek Thompson in Las Vegas and had been collecting disability benefits for a chronic back injury that I definitely didn't have. Before we dive into this incredible story of identity theft that goes far beyond anything you could imagine, please hit that subscribe button and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from today. My name is Patricia Williams, and I live in a small town outside of Phoenix, Arizona, where I moved 5 years ago after my husband passed away from cancer. I had been looking forward to a quiet retirement, managing my modest savings, and enjoying the simple pleasures of gardening and reading in the peaceful desert environment that my late husband and I had always dreamed of experiencing together. My relationship with my 42-year-old daughter Michelle had been strained for many years, primarily due to her ongoing struggles with addiction, poor financial decisions, and a pattern of lying and manipulation that had exhausted my patience and resources over the decades. Michelle had been in and out of rehabilitation programs, had multiple arrests for various crimes, and had burned bridges with most of our extended family through her destructive behavior. The foundation of Michelle's elaborate scheme began innocuously enough about 6 years ago when she had asked to borrow my identification documents to help her apply for a job at a local restaurant, claiming that her wallet had been stolen and she needed temporary access to my Social Security card and birth certificate while waiting for replacements. I had reluctantly agreed to help her, thinking that steady employment might finally help her turn her life around and become more responsible. What I didn't realize at the time was that Michelle had been planning an elaborate identity theft scheme that would allow her to completely assume my legal identity while continuing to live her own life using my credentials for financial gain. She had researched the process extensively and had identified numerous ways to exploit the system using a parent's personal information. Michelle's preparation for this massive fraud was thorough and calculating. She had spent months studying Social Security regulations, tax laws, and government benefit programs to understand exactly how to manipulate the system using my identity. She had even researched the specific documentation requirements for marriage licenses in Nevada and had identified Las Vegas as the ideal location for her fraudulent wedding because of their streamlined processing and minimal verification requirements. The first sign that something was seriously wrong came when I received a credit card statement in the mail for an account that I had never opened. The card was issued to Patricia Williams at my address, but the spending pattern and merchant names were completely unfamiliar to me, including purchases at stores I had never visited and charges for services I had never used. When I called the credit card company to report the fraudulent account, the customer service representative informed me that the account had been opened using my Social Security number and date of birth, along with employment information showing that I worked as a waitress at a restaurant in downtown Phoenix. The representative seemed confused when I explained that I was retired and had never worked in food service. "Ma'am, according to our records, you've been employed at Sunset Diner for the past 3 years and have been making regular payments on this account," the representative explained. "Are you saying that someone else has been using your identity to maintain employment and make purchases?" I immediately suspected that Michelle might be involved, given that she had access to my personal documents and had a history of financial dishonesty. However, I initially assumed that she had simply opened a credit card in my name without realizing the full scope of what she had actually done with my identity. Over the following weeks, I began receiving more mail and phone calls related to accounts and activities that I had never authorized. There were medical bills for treatments I had never received, insurance claims for accidents I had never been involved in, and even a notice from the Internal Revenue Service about discrepancies in my tax returns for years when I had filed completely different information. The situation became increasingly confusing and alarming as I tried to unravel what appeared to be a massive case of identity theft. Every phone call to government agencies and financial institutions revealed new evidence that someone had been systematically using my personal information to create an entirely separate life. The breakthrough came when I decided to request a comprehensive credit report to see the full extent of the fraudulent activity. What I discovered was far more shocking and elaborate than simple credit card fraud. According to the official records, Patricia Williams had been living a completely different life than the one I was actually experiencing. The credit report showed employment history at restaurants and retail establishments where I had never worked, residential addresses at apartments where I had never lived, and financial activities, including loans, insurance policies, and government benefit applications that I had never submitted. Most shocking of all, there was a marriage certificate on file showing that I had married Derek Thompson in a Las Vegas wedding chapel 3 years earlier. "This is impossible," I told the credit reporting agency representative. "I've been a widow for 5 years, and I've never been to Las Vegas or met anyone named Derek Thompson. Someone has been using my identity to create an entirely fabricated life story." The representative explained that identity theft cases involving family members were unfortunately common, but the scope and duration of the fraud in my case was unusually extensive. Most identity theft involves isolated incidents of credit card fraud or loan applications, but my situation involved someone systematically living as me for years while maintaining their own separate identity. The investigation process was incredibly complex and frustrating, requiring me to prove that I was actually Patricia Williams and that the other activities associated with my name and social security number were fraudulent. This meant providing documentation of my real employment history, residential addresses, and personal relationships to government agencies that were skeptical of my claims. The Social Security Administration was particularly difficult to deal with because their records showed that I had been collecting disability benefits for a chronic back injury that prevented me from working. According to their system, I had been receiving monthly payments for 3 years and had provided medical documentation supporting my claim of complete disability. "Mrs. Williams, our records show that you've been collecting Social Security disability insurance benefits since 2021. Based on medical evidence of severe spinal injuries that prevent you from engaging in substantial gainful activity," the Social Security representative explained during one of many frustrating phone calls. I had to undergo medical examinations and provide extensive documentation proving that I had never suffered the injuries described in the disability claim and had never applied for or received disability benefits. The process required me to hire lawyers and pay for independent medical evaluations to contradict the fraudulent medical records that had been submitted in my name. Meanwhile, the investigation was revealing more details about how extensively my identity had been compromised. Michelle had apparently been using my Social Security number to file tax returns, claiming significant income from employment that I had never had, while simultaneously claiming disability benefits that created a massive contradiction in the official records. She had also used my identity to apply for government assistance programs, including food stamps, housing assistance, and medical benefits, while living in apartments that she rented, using my credit history and income information. The fraud involved multiple government agencies and had generated thousands of dollars in benefits that were obtained illegally. The marriage to Derek Thompson added another layer of complexity to the fraud scheme. Michelle had apparently met Derek through her work at one of the restaurants where she was employed using my identity, and they had decided to get married in Las Vegas using my legal identity rather than her own. Derek Thompson turned out to be a convicted felon with an extensive criminal history who was also involved in various fraud schemes and had multiple outstanding warrants for his arrest. By marrying him using my identity, Michelle had created legal complications that affected my own status and potentially made me liable for his debts and legal problems. "Your daughter essentially gave you a criminal husband without your knowledge or consent," my attorney explained. "According to the legal system, you are currently married to a man with outstanding arrest warrants and significant financial obligations that could become your responsibility." the process of untangling the fraudulent marriage required hiring a specialized attorney who dealt with identity theft cases involving family members. The legal fees were enormous, and the process took over a year to complete, during which time I was legally considered married to a criminal I had never met. The investigation also revealed that Michelle had been using my Medicare benefits to receive medical treatments for her own health problems, including addiction treatment programs and mental health services that she couldn't afford under her own identity. She had been using my insurance cards and identification to receive thousands of dollars worth of medical care while I was unaware that my benefits were being depleted. Perhaps most disturbing was the discovery that Michelle had been using my identity to apply for loans and credit cards that she had no intention of repaying. She had accumulated over $50,000 in debt using my credit history and Social Security number, leaving me responsible for payments on loans that had been used to fund her lifestyle and support her addictions. The emotional impact of discovering that my own daughter had been living as me for years while destroying my credit, my legal status, and my financial security was devastating in ways that I couldn't have imagined. The betrayal was so complete and systematic that it felt like she had essentially murdered my legal identity and replaced it with a criminal version. As the investigation deepened, I learned that Michelle had created an entire fake employment history for me that spanned multiple restaurants and retail establishments throughout the Phoenix area. She had been showing up to work using my Social Security number and identification, collecting paychecks in my name, and even receiving performance reviews and promotions as Patricia Williams while I was completely unaware that I was supposedly employed. The restaurants where Michelle worked using my identity had no idea that the woman they knew as Patricia Williams was actually someone else entirely. They had tax records, payroll information, and employment files for me dating back several years, even though I had never set foot in their establishments or applied for work there. "We're very confused about this situation," the manager of Sunset Diner told me when I contacted them. "Patricia has been one of our most reliable employees for 3 years. She's never missed a shift, always arrives on time, and customers love her. Are you saying that this woman has been using your identity all this time?" The complexity of Michelle's deception extended to every aspect of the employment fraud. She had been filing W-2 forms and paying taxes on the income she earned using my identity, which created additional complications with the Internal Revenue Service when they discovered that 2 different people were filing tax returns under the same Social Security number. The housing fraud was equally elaborate and systematic. Michelle had been renting apartments in various locations around Phoenix, using my credit score and income information from her fraudulent employment. She had established herself as a reliable tenant with good credit and steady income, all based on the false identity she had created using my personal information. The landlords of these apartments had rental agreements, security deposits, and lease renewals for Patricia Williams, even though I had never viewed the properties or signed any rental documents. Michelle had been living in these apartments for years, while using my identity for all official purposes, including utility accounts, internet service, and even voter registration. "Your daughter created a parallel universe where you were living a completely different life," the identity theft specialist explained. "She didn't just steal your information for isolated transactions. She built an entire alternate existence using your legal identity, while you were unaware that this other version of you even existed." The medical fraud was particularly concerning because Michelle had been using my insurance benefits to receive treatment for serious health conditions, including drug addiction and mental health disorders. She had been admitted to rehabilitation facilities, received prescription medications, and undergone medical procedures all under my name and insurance coverage. The medical records showed that Patricia Williams had a documented history of substance abuse, bipolar disorder, and chronic pain conditions that required ongoing treatment and medication management. These false medical records could have affected my ability to obtain health insurance, life insurance, or medical care in the future if they weren't properly corrected. Michelle had even been using my identity to receive mental health counseling and psychiatric medications, creating a documented history of psychological problems that I had never experienced. The medical providers who treated her had detailed files about my supposed mental health conditions and treatment responses that were completely fabricated. The criminal investigation into Michelle's activities revealed the extent of her fraud scheme and resulted in multiple felony charges, including identity theft, Social Security fraud, tax fraud, wire fraud, and medical fraud. The case attracted attention from federal agencies because the fraud involved multiple government programs and had crossed state lines. During the investigation, law enforcement discovered that Michelle had been keeping detailed records of her fraudulent activities, including fake identification documents, forged medical records, and financial information for all the accounts she had opened using my identity. She had essentially been maintaining a complete duplicate identity with backup documentation and emergency plans. The investigators found that Michelle had been collaborating with Derek Thompson and several other individuals to operate a larger identity theft ring that targeted elderly victims and family members. They had developed sophisticated methods for obtaining personal information and had been selling stolen identities to other criminals for use in various fraud schemes. "Your daughter wasn't working alone," the FBI agent explained. "She was part of an organized criminal enterprise that specialized in family identity theft because relatives have easy access to personal information and their victims are less likely to immediately suspect fraud when they start receiving bills or official notices." Michelle was eventually arrested and charged with 19 separate felony counts related to identity theft and fraud. During her arrest, she was found to be in possession of multiple fake identification documents, including driver's licenses and Social Security cards in various names, suggesting that my identity theft was part of a larger criminal operation. The trial process was emotionally devastating because I had to testify against my own daughter and provide evidence of how her actions had destroyed my financial security and legal status. Michelle showed no remorse during the proceedings and actually seemed angry that she had been caught rather than sorry for what she had done to me. She told me that she deserved to use my identity because I wasn't doing anything important with it anyway. I testified during the trial. She said that I was just sitting around feeling sorry for myself after my husband died, and she was putting my information to better use by actually working and contributing to society. Michelle's defense attorney argued that she had been struggling with addiction and mental health issues that impaired her judgment. But the prosecution demonstrated that the fraud scheme was too elaborate and sustained to be explained by impaired decision-making. The evidence showed careful planning and sophisticated knowledge of government systems that indicated premeditation rather than impulse. The prosecution presented evidence that Michelle had been researching identity theft techniques online, had purchased fake identification documents from professional forgers, and had been coaching other family members and associates on how to steal identities from elderly relatives. The scope of her criminal activities extended far beyond my case. The sentencing phase of the trial was particularly difficult because I had to decide whether to provide a victim impact statement that might influence Michelle's punishment. As her mother, I felt conflicted about advocating for a harsh sentence, but as her victim, I wanted justice for the years of fraud and the ongoing financial and legal problems she had created. Michelle was ultimately sentenced to 8 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. She was also ordered to pay restitution for the fraudulent benefits she had received and the costs associated with restoring my legal identity, though the likelihood of actually recovering those funds was minimal given her lack of assets or legitimate income. The process of restoring my legal identity and undoing the damage caused by Michelle's fraud took over 3 years and required constant communication with dozens of government agencies, financial institutions, and service providers. Every aspect of my official existence had been contaminated by the fraudulent activities, and proving that I was the real Patricia Williams became a full-time job. The Social Security Administration required extensive documentation and multiple appeals to remove the fraudulent disability benefits from my record and restore my eligibility for legitimate Medicare benefits. The process involved medical examinations, financial audits, and legal proceedings that were expensive and time-consuming. The Internal Revenue Service investigation was particularly complex because Michelle had been filing tax returns in my name that claimed income I had never earned, while also claiming deductions and credits that I wasn't entitled to. The IRS demanded that I pay back taxes and penalties for the fraudulent returns, even though I had also filed my own legitimate returns for the same years. The system assumes that if someone has your Social Security number and personal information, they must be acting with your knowledge and consent, my tax attorney explained. Proving that you're the victim of identity theft rather than a willing participant in tax fraud requires extensive documentation and often takes years to resolve. The credit restoration process was equally challenging because the fraudulent accounts and activities had created a complex web of financial obligations and legal relationships that were difficult to untangle. Every credit card, loan, and service account that Michelle had opened using my identity had to be individually disputed and closed. The marriage to Derek Thompson created ongoing legal complications that persisted even after Michelle's conviction. Legally dissolving a marriage that had been entered into fraudulently required specialized legal procedures and court orders that took months to obtain and cost thousands of dollars in attorney fees. The emotional recovery from Michelle's betrayal was perhaps the most difficult aspect of the entire ordeal. The realization that my own daughter had been willing to destroy my life for financial gain shattered my trust in family relationships and forced me to question everything I thought I knew about parenting and unconditional love. The financial impact of Michelle's fraud was devastating and long-lasting. The legal fees, medical examinations, and administrative costs associated with restoring my identity totaled over $30,000, which represented a significant portion of my retirement savings. The debt that Michelle had accumulated in my name also affected my credit score and financial options for years. The ongoing consequences of the identity theft continued to surface long after Michelle's conviction and imprisonment. I regularly received phone calls and mail related to accounts, services, and legal matters that were connected to the fraudulent activities, requiring constant vigilance and documentation to prove that I was not responsible for these obligations. The case also highlighted significant weaknesses in the systems designed to prevent and detect identity theft, particularly when the perpetrator is a family member with legitimate access to personal information. Government agencies and financial institutions often assume that family members are acting with consent, making it difficult for victims to prove that they are being defrauded. The psychological impact of having my legal identity stolen and corrupted by my own daughter created trust issues and anxiety that required professional counseling to address. The violation felt more personal and devastating than if the fraud had been committed by a stranger, because it represented a complete betrayal of the parent-child relationship. The recovery process also revealed the importance of regularly monitoring credit reports, government benefit statements, and official records to detect unauthorized activity early. Many victims of family identity theft don't discover the fraud until years after it begins, making the damage more extensive and difficult to remedy. Today, 5 years after discovering Michelle's elaborate identity theft scheme, I have largely restored my legal identity and financial status, though the process required significant time, money, and emotional energy that I had planned to spend enjoying my retirement. The experience taught me important lessons about family relationships, financial security, and the vulnerability of personal information in modern society. Michelle was released from federal prison last year after serving 6 years of her 8-year sentence, but we have had no contact since her arrest. The trust that was destroyed by her systematic betrayal cannot be rebuilt, and I have made the difficult decision to exclude her permanently from my life and any future inheritance considerations. The experience reinforced the importance of protecting personal information even from family members, maintaining independent verification of official records and benefits, and seeking professional help immediately when signs of identity theft are discovered. The assumption that family members can be trusted with sensitive information proved to be dangerous and costly in my case. If you found this shocking story of family identity theft and systematic fraud compelling, and want to hear more incredible true stories about family betrayal and financial crimes, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more amazing content. Share your thoughts about identity theft, family trust, and financial fraud in the comments below. And let us know if you've ever experienced similar situations with family members you thought you could trust. For another unbelievable story about family deception and financial fraud, check out the next video that should be appearing on your screen right now.